Welcome to Paranormal Almanac with your host, Kurt Sandvik.
Hey, howdy, hi. That's right, I'm your host, Kurt Sandvik. On this week's edition of Paranormal Almanac, we're going to talk about UFOs that were retrieved and where they possibly went. But first, before shout-outs, head on over to paranormal-almanac.dashery.com. That's paranormal-almanac.dashery.com. I literally just released a new style of shirt minutes ago. Some of you will like it, some of you won't. Alrighty, let's get to shout-outs. Shout-outs going out to all of the patrons. Thank you so much. But before I even get to those, I have two special shout-outs already. My first special shout-out is to the always incredible Nico and Steve and Cher and Mouse and Sean and Thornton and Romeo and Chuck and Maggie, Lee, and too many cats and kittens, too much. Yesterday I finally got to go to the P.O. box. If you guys want it, I'll give it out in just a second. I got the sweetest gifts from both the people I just mentioned, Nico and Steve and Cher, and all the kittens and the cats, and also from Janet Richter. And I got to say, I needed it. It's been a really long, really tough week. I'm not going to get into the negativity. I'm not going to tell you why this episode took so long. I'll hint at it in just a little bit, but I'm not getting into it. I'm not giving negativity any of the, I'm staying positive. But I need what I got yesterday. I absolutely needed. You were absolutely phenomenal. Nico and Stephen Cher made me this amazing blanket that I'm actually snuggled up in right now while I'm giving this episode because it's cold for California. I'm not going to say it's cold because I know what a lot of you are going through, but it is cold for California, so I'm snuggled up in this incredible blanket. Absolute sweetest. And then Janet, absolute sweetest gift ever. I cannot thank you enough. To say that you guys are getting me through hard times is a very accurate statement. And thank you all so much. But shout-outs going out to all of the patrons, including Sophie Alice, the Babster, your local cryptid, which, local cryptid, funny thing is, we're going to have a cryptid episode coming up very soon. It's of the 10 episodes that I'm working on now, 2 of them are cryptid episodes. I'm very excited about those. Flory, the naughty innuendo. Jen, Danny Darkcipher from Australia. How's it going? Sarah Jane Oxley, Angie, Lisa Cervantes, Curious Hedgehog, Diana, Mr. J, George Berg, Casey the Pitbull, and all of Casey's puppies, including Stitch. Love you so much. Deb B, Corey, GC, Tracy, Newt MacGyver on it, B Melty, Avril, Loch Ness, not a monster, Stacy, Leviathan, Stygian, Chani the Pommy. Stygian, happy birthday, belated, if I haven't said that to you already on the podcast. I know I said it in person, but maybe not on the podcast. Chani the Pommy, JT, Doogie Whore, Mike G, Tracy B, Jeff, Richard, Alec, Karen, Duran, Lori, Rebecca, Ann, Stephen Cher. Again, thank you so much. Jane Ann, Jennifer, Heather G, your friendly neighborhood skinwalker, Zuzus, What's It, Nico Cher and the Mouse, and all of the cats and kittens. Again, incredible. Thank you so much. I am 100% snuggled. Mark and Tina, Tortuga, Alabama White Thing. God, I love that one. Andy Ross, Virginia Mailman, Tony the Magician, Vicky, Crow, Isabel, Jen, Amber, Tracy, Sandy, Paige, Cow, Scott, Andrea, Vanessa. If I was the devil, thank you again. So sweet. Elizabeth, Sherry, Art Muffin, Tim, East Clintwood, Kenneth, Alexandra, Zozo the Demon, Hayden, Cindy, Ashley, Robin, Lauren, Russell, Isabel, Audra, Dorian, Cindy, Jerry, Jeff T. Hey, howdy, hi, buddy. Thinking of you a lot lately. I hope to see you soon. Lawrence, the Lawrence Strawn. Hey, howdy, hi. Veronica, Autumn, Carolyn, Nanashi, Todd, Jamie, and Elijah Hendrickson, Dan, Laura Pitts, and the one, the only, the amazing, the longest-running patron in the world, for me anyway, Gamer Fan. Thank you all so much, with 2 special shout-outs, as always, to Joe Teague and to my boy Stitch. Okay. I hope you are all staying warm. This insane cold storm that's going through, for the international listeners that might not know, right now in America, it is... Hold on. The microphone's falling. There we go. Here we go. Sorry about that. There's a cold front that is just, going through and just horrific, like negative 25 degrees. It's horrifically cold for a lot of you. I really, really, really hope that you are all staying safe, staying warm. If you need help, please reach out to everybody that can possibly help. This goes out to everybody. If you need help, reach out. Never feel like there's nobody that'll reach out or that there's no one for you to reach out to. It might be a friend, it might be a family member, it might be someone in your community, a coworker. Just reach out. All righty. With that, stay safe, stay warm. Please, please, please stay safe.
Ghosted demons that haunt the night. Strange objects fly through the sky. Shadow people are spending the night again. Black-eyed children knock on my door. A portal to hell opens in my room. Time travel man says the world is changing soon.
Don't fucking shoot Bigfoot.
So I'm like 7 minutes into this episode, and I've just realized it's probably not the healthiest for me to do an episode right after I just watched a video of someone getting murdered in Minnesota yet again. I'm a bit on the angry side of the scale of things today, so I apologize, but I'm going to try and focus on this episode. It's a really good episode. This episode, before I get into paranormal news, this episode took me a very, very, very long time, longer than most episodes take, for me to do and track down and try and get some information, because it's an episode I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it was a daunting episode at a daunting time in my life. And then, like I said, to watch a video of someone getting murdered in cold blood right before I start an episode, it's not the best mindset to be in. So I'm going to try and focus. I promise you. Let's talk about paranormal news. Up first in paranormal news, Bank of England warned to prepare for aliens due to imminent U.S. disclosure. Now, this story is everywhere in the UFO community right now. People are taking bets as to 2026 is the year of full disclosure, not little piecemeal disclosures, but a president walking out and saying, extraterrestrials are real, we have their craft, we are in contact with them. And appears that people in the know are starting to warn to be prepared for it. There was an increasing number of theories and beliefs surrounding the existence of aliens, and the topic has seemingly intensified over the past year. Now, a longtime former employee who spent 10 years at the Bank of England has reportedly flipped the switch from theory to full-blown warning about extraterrestrial life. Interestingly, one of the biggest reported driving factors behind this warning stems from the United States and the belief that a significant disclosure is on the horizon. Helen McCaw, who served as senior analyst in financial security at the Bank of England, sent a message to the bank with a significant alien warning. She wrote to Andrew Bailey, who is the bank's governor, urging him to prepare for the possibility that the United States, specifically the White House, may confirm the existence of extraterrestrial life. Basically, what they're saying is that if they do disclose it, the United States government appears to be partway through a multi-year process to declassify and disclose information on the existence of information of technology, advanced non-human intelligence responsible for UAPs. And if they do, prepare for not a religious backlash that would have happened in the 40s and 50s. And I truly believe that really would have happened. It would have broke a lot of people's brains on the religious side of things. But no, this one is economically. If they come forward, if the president comes forward and says 100%, we have extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials are real. They visited us. We have their bodies. We have their UFOs. It will potentially cause extreme price volatility in financial markets due to catastrophizing, sure, or euphoria. Basically, it's catastrophic. I don't think I've ever seen the word catastrophizing. There we go. That's how he say it. Good Lord. I'm sorry. I'll focus, I swear. Or euphoria. Basically a collapsing confidence about the stock market. That is the only thing left that could happen for it coming forward. People aren't going to be surprised. We won't be surprised. My niece and nephews won't be surprised. Sure, my brothers might, my parents might, but for the most part, every year they do that poll and more people are like, yeah, of course aliens are real. So it's not that, and it's not religious. It's literally economic. What happens to the economy if this word comes out that could be earth-shattering for some people? Alrighty, up next in paranormal news, a Dorito-shaped UFO has been spotted, and this one is brand new. It came out yesterday afternoon. An off-the-grid explorer has spotted a mysterious UFO-shaped aircraft flying over Area 51. Anders Ottensen, a self-described backpacker and videographer, was documenting his trip to the desert surrounding the infamous Nevada Area 51 on January 14th when he saw an unidentified craft overhead around 3 a.m. He'd already seen what appeared to be a B-2 stealth bomber flying over Area 51 2 hours earlier and noted that this craft was shaped more like an equilateral triangle, or what UFO researchers have called the Dorito. And there is a photo of it, and it is very, it's Dorito-shaped. Picture a Dorito, that's what it's shaped like, not nacho cheese colored. Moreover, a scanner monitoring Area 51's unencrypted radio frequencies picked up a bizarre transmission full of code words themed around beer, food, and snacks instead of standard military jargon. Ottensen said, this isn't the first time the UFO has been seen flying over the U.S. Or over Area 51. It's very interesting. It's very, it looks like a Dorito. There's no other way to say it. It looks like a Dorito flying overhead. And it doesn't look like a B-2. I agree with that. Okay. Real quick, this is the only part of the paranormal news part. It's one sentence long. The next court date for the Conjuring House lawsuit is January 27th. So you got 3 more days, then I'm sure there'll be another news article. Okay, now paranormal news people, settle in on this one. And I'm serious. Settle in. There is an internet rumor going around that Earth will lose gravity for 7 seconds on August 12th, 2026. That's right. Coming up in August, on August 12th, Earth will lose gravity for 7 seconds. First, no. Second, stop it. Third, this is worse than the dumb secret Stranger Things episode that was all going around the internet. Oh my gosh, it's going to be a secret. You got to go log in at 7 p.m. Netflix is going to happen. Fourth, I'll tell you why it's dumb. And fifth, just stop it. So there's a TikToker and an Instagram user who I'm not going to give you the name, but his account or their account is now unavailable anyway. They claim that on August 12th, 2026, the world will lose gravity for 7 seconds. NASA knows this. They're preparing, but won't tell us why. And here's where Kurt gets angry. The original video, had almost 62,000 likes and had been shared 268,000 times on Instagram alone, and even more so on TikTok. For the record, my most liked TikTok is me being chosen as a bad egg for Willy Wonka, and it's, I think, 20-something thousand. A video that is pure nonsense, BS, bullshit pulled out of someone's ass is getting 62,000 likes and was shared 268,000 times on Instagram alone, even more so on TikTok. And then other people jumped on the bandwagon and said, oh, I've seen this too. I've seen this document. I've seen this memo. This is all nonsense. It's all not true. And then other people are saying this is true. Prepare now. August 12th, 2026. 7 seconds of no gravity. It angers me. All of my new Paranormal Almanac minutes that I've been doing, and if you don't know what they are, please check them out on Instagram and on TikTok and on YouTube and on the Facebook fan page. I'm doing Paranormal Almanac minutes, like on this day in history about UFOs or the paranormal of some kind. They all have under 1,000 views each. Yet this nonsense gets hundreds of thousands of shares, and again, is pure BS. Okay, so it says a leaked NASA document called Project Anchor reportedly leaked in November of 2024. Okay, let's pause right there. Then why haven't we all been talking about this since November 2024? Project Anchor. Okay. They say that Project Anchor, with an $89 billion budget, its goal is to survive a 7-second gravitational anomaly expected on August 12th, 2026 at 14:33 UTC, which I think is 3:33 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's all I care. Look, all I care about is to make sure that I'm not walking rum on August 12th at 3:33 p.m. and then all of a sudden we both start floating up for 7 seconds. It's not going to happen. But the expected, quote, falling casualties are in the 40 to 60 million range. Kurt here. So why 40 to 60 million people? The rest of there's 8 billion people on the planet, but they're only expecting 40 to 60 billion people to what? Be outside at 3:33 p.m. or in their car or outside at all, not in their apartment locked up in a tiny closet. Like, it angers me so much. So what they say will happen is, at that time, 40 to 60 million people will be outside and float up for 7 seconds before plummeting back to Earth, which is actually, again, massively low considering just the number of people that are outdoors at any given time all around the world. They have broken down what occurs in that time. People, animals, anything not locked down will start floating in the first 2 seconds. Then will continue to rise during the 3 to 4 second interval, reaching 15 to 20 meters, that's 49 to 65 feet for people like me, in the air before, like I said, plummeting to Earth, dying. So if you believe this, I recommend going into a closet or a tiny room on August 12th. You know what, let's just say all day to be safe, and stay there just surrounded by pillows, of course. Don't go use the toilet, because what if it happens right then? Then you're floating it up, and everything that you just put in the toilet is floating up, and it's going to be anarchy. Now comes the science. And this is not from me. This is from smart people. The first law, people that can actually pronounce catastrophizing. The first law of dynamics show that a body at rest will remain at rest unless an outside force acts on it. And a body in motion at a constant velocity will remain in motion in a straight line unless acted upon by an outside force. So, no, it won't happen that way. Under gravity, you have an equal and opposite reaction pushing off the floor. With the gravity magically gone, that reaction will push you off, but it'll be small. So, unless you jump at exactly the right time, and why would you? But let's say you do. Let's say, for whatever reason, you want to prove Kurt wrong on August 12th at, I think, 3:33 p.m. You do the math, 14:33 UTC. You go outside and you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and you jump right at the exact moment. Guess what? You're still not going to get 20 meters up in the air. But wait, there's more. The finale, according to the idiots, the finale is that at 7.3 seconds, inexplicably, gravity returns. They don't explain why. And everything just comes crashing down. Okay, the Earth is still spinning. Everything's still moving. It's not just you're going to go up and you're going to go right back down. Again, smarter people than me can have already proven this wrong. But if you'd like to watch them, they're on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and pretty much everywhere else, probably getting hundreds of thousands hits too. But the big question is, what the F will cause this momentary blip in gravity? Well, they've got an answer for that too. The intersection of two gravitational waves from black holes predicted in 2019 with a probability of 94.7% is what causes this. NASA has known about this for 5 years. All right, let's break that down. So NASA has known about this since 2019. You started this saying they've known for 5 years. 2019 isn't 5 years ago. It's 7 years ago. But NASA didn't tell anybody until 2024. So your logic is NASA learned about this. Didn't tell anybody until 2024. It didn't get out until 2026. It's just dumb. If you're a regular listener, you know how many apocalypses you've lived through. And guess what? This won't happen either. So yay, add this to the list. Or, again, if you really, really want to, screw something into the ground or tie a rope to a tree, tie it around your waist, go out there and jump and see what happens. And maybe you will go. I mean, obviously don't put a 20-meter rope around your waist. Do like a 3 or 4 foot rope and then fly for 7.3 seconds. Have fun with your 7 seconds of non-gravity before you fall back down to the earth. Put a mattress underneath you or a trampoline. Enjoy this. Have fun with this. Go out to a lake. That'd be the cool thing. Go out to a lake, jump off of a air mattress right at that moment, fly up, and then land in the water. It sounds like it'd be fun. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to tempt fate. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to tempt fate. And on August, whatever, what date was it, August 12th? August 12th at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'm going to go for a walk. And if I float up, you know what? That's on me. That's on good. All righty. Let's take a quick break because we're already 23 minutes into this episode. And we haven't even started yet. We'll take a quick break. Stay where you are. I will find you. Buckle up, baby. We are back. On this edition, let's talk about some UFOs that have been retrieved around the world and where we think they ended up. This is going to be a long one. This one took me actually, I don't know how long. I'll be honest. I don't know how long this episode will be. My guess is, based on the length of the outline that I have, this will be a long one. Usually I can tell. What I do is I do my entire outline. And if I can scroll up in 10 scrolls, it's an hour episode. This one is about a 23, 24 scroll. So it might be double long. I have no idea. Let's find out together, shall we? You'll know before I will. But I really have always wondered, okay, we retrieved some UFOs. I know that. You probably believe that. And if you do, great. Go down this rabbit hole with me. If you don't, listen up, because this isn't from me. This is from people who in the know. But in my opinion, we've retrieved some UFOs. I think that's real. Where did those UFOs go? Did they go to one location? Did they go to multiple locations? Have they moved around since initially, like the Roswell one? We know it kind of did a couple of stops before making its way to Wright-Patterson, spoiler. What happened to it then? Do we know? And I was shocked at how hard this subject is. And this is one of the many reasons why this episode took longer. I had to go down so many rabbit holes. Look, very little of this is 100% when it comes to where UFOs are kept. Obviously, it's all top secret. So a lot is just best guess or eyewitness testimony or Freedom of Information Act documents or congressional hearing testimony. That seems to be the big one. So with that out of the way, how far back do we have to go for UFO retrievals and storage by the government? And I'm sure you're all shouting, you just said it, Roswell, or 1947, or something that ties into Roswell. But actually, we have to go even further back. We go all the way back to 1933. Now, this first one has been making the rounds for as long as basically I've been into UFOs. When I would go to UFO conventions as a kid, this was hinted at or talked about in a hushed or, we know this thing, but we don't know this thing kind of way. And it wasn't for a long time until like 70s or 80s. I don't know. I'll give you the dates in a little bit, but it wasn't for a while before real information started coming out about this one that proved that all these things that people have been talking about forever, since like the 50s, is true. It really came to light with those Senate hearings on UFOs in the past 5 years. What I'm talking about is the UFO that crashed in Magenta, Italy in 1933. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on any specific UFO crash because then this episode would be 17 hours long. But here's the overview. David Grush in June of 2023 really sparked this one back into the news. Again, UFO people have been talking about it forever, but his talking about it in a congressional hearing really solidified this one. They recovered a partially intact UFO. Now, we know that this partially intact UFO was recovered in Magenta, Italy in 1933 from an internal memo from Italian Secret Services. In 1933, this memo gets out. It wasn't leaked for a long time, but this memo gets out to a few governments. And this memo included drawings of the UFO and details. And again, it came from the Italian Secret Services. The 1933 document, again, there's drawings of the UFO, there's details of where it was, where it landed, how it crashed, includes a craft described as a metallic and roughly 50 feet in diameter, crashed near Magenta, Lombardy on June 13th, 1933. The file also consists of two 1933 telegrams, one of which demands, quote, absolute silence regarding the alleged landing on national soil of an unknown aircraft under the orders of Mussolini. At the time it crashed, I'm going to pause right here. At the time it crashed, they initially thought, oh God, this is something that the Nazis came up with. And then quickly realized, that ain't the Nazis. Those things inside are definitely not Nazis. What is this thing? The other telegram threatens to arrest and there are penalties for journalists reporting on the news about the aircraft's origin and nature. Again, they're trying to contain as much as they can contain. They know the word is out there. They're trying to contain as much as they can contain, and they're trying to be very general about it to is it the Nazis? Is it the Allied forces? What is this thing? We've never seen anything like it. And then, obviously, when they see the bodies, they go, this is not of this earth. Now, the document features handwritten sketches of the UFO, which again are described as having portholes on the side and a shape resembling two saucers joined together about 50 feet in diameter. Documents refer to a secret department called Cabinet RS-33, which is Special Affairs. I couldn't find out a lot about it that I think is actual valid information or more than everything I found was more than a grain of salt. It was really rabbit hole stuff, but it does seem like Cabinet RS-33 Special Affairs was set up by Mussolini for a variety of different reasons, but primarily to investigate this UFO, which some reports suggest the Cabinet RS-33 was headed by inventor, I forgot, Guglielmo Marconi. Yeah, sure, why not? It's Marconi. I forgot to do the little, here's how you say his stupid first name. Both these telegrams allegedly were sent on the personal orders of, again, Mussolini himself. So, UFO crash was retrieved by Mussolini and his people, was investigated or ran by Cabinet RS-33, run by Marconi. It was studied by both his scientists, and from another source, they said Mussolini's next priority was to study the craft. Italy's top scientists and engineers were assembled to form a top-secret group, supposedly headed by Marconi, so that's that Cabinet RS-33, inventor of the radio. No one cares about that. Initially, no one, including Mussolini, strongly believed the craft was of extraterrestrial origin. They thought, again, it was the Nazis. After all the bodies were retrieved, after all, the bodies retrieved had a strong resemblance to Germans with their blue eyes and blonde hairs, but not exactly terrestrial looking. So Nordic aliens, if you know anything about aliens, you're talking about the Nordic aliens. It was also studied by Hitler's men. Mussolini actually contacted Hitler. Hitler's men came out and investigated this UFO before the Vatican helped the American OSS retrieve it. Now, this again is very, very quickly, this is a high overview of it. A lot of crap happened, but ultimately, Vatican helped the American OSS retrieve this UFO. Again, keeping it as brief as I can, what happened was during World War II, the Allied forces bombed Italy, but the aircraft facility that housed the UFO survived the raids. The Allied troops knew about it because of the Vatican. They went in, and it was secured by Allied troops. Okay, so then it gets taken to America. But now, government officials in Italy, Hitler's people, the Vatican, they all know about aliens since at least 1933 and have worked together investigating this UFO. So where did the UFO go? That's the important part. Again, if you really want to deep dive the Magenta UFO crash, you got to go through a lot of rabbit holes, but that's the overview of it. Vatican stepped in, got it away from Mussolini, got it away from Hitler, told Americans exactly where it was during the raids. They made sure that the aircraft facility wasn't going to get bombed or destroyed and recovered the UFO. So where did it go? Well, two of the Americans that retrieved the UFO have actually been named numerous times since this 1933 document. Their names are Alan Dulles and James Jesus Angleton. Fun fact, James Jesus Angleton went on to form the CIA and is also one of my favorite songs from Ghost of Room. Honestly, if you like Mike Doty or Soul Coughing, Ghost of Room is his band that he did around the pandemic, and they did a song called James Jesus Angleton. It's fantastic. But anyhow, let's look into these guys real briefly. James Jesus Angleton, founding officer of the CIA in 1947. It's true, he transitioned from the Office of Strategic Services. Hey, that OSS, the Americans that went in to get the UFO. He later became the chief of CIA counterintelligence from 1954 to 1975. Get this, Angleton was a major player in intelligence in Italy during the war. This has been confirmed. This isn't, I think that I know this. This is a fact. What I'm telling you right now has been fact. He did work for the OSS. He did work for the OSS in intelligence in Italy during the war. That is a definite connection to him and this UFO. He would have been in the know, if you will. James Jesus Angleton was one of the people most directly behind UFO cover-ups. And many people think, if you go down that rabbit hole, James Jesus Angleton was also behind the cover-up or the assassination of JFK. It's a very weird rabbit hole to go down, but if you're into the JFK assassination, as you know I am, and you like UFOs and everything, it is a very odd rabbit hole to go down, but there does seem to be a lot of evidence that connects him also to possibly the assassination of JFK. Apparently, James Angleton's father was in the OSS, lived in Milan, 3 miles away from the crash, and was the person in the OSS who would have sent troops or Americans in the OSS as well, lower-ranked people in the OSS, to investigate something like this. More importantly, James Jesus Angleton seemed to have been the OSS liaison to the Vatican during World War II. There is evidence online, and it's not that much of a grain of salt evidence. It really looks like it's there to me. They really connected these dots. They know where he was stationed and what he was doing. He seemed to have been the OSS's liaison to the Vatican during World War II. Now you want to get here's some grain of salt stuff from him. He is also rumored to have incriminating evidence of J. Edgar Hoover in a compromising position with his lifelong friend Clyde Tolson, which is one of the alleged reasons that Hoover didn't investigate the JFK assassinations, if you want to go back down that rabbit hole. Basically, this guy would have 100% been in the right place at the right time with the right connections, his father, and high enough in the OSS, working for the Vatican as a liaison to know about this UFO and to help get it. So immediately, I'm saying, me personally, James Jesus Angleton definitely was connected to the Magenta UFO crash, retrieval, and sending it over to America. The other person that I mentioned, Alan Dulles. This is quicker, don't worry. He is an American lawyer who was the first civilian director of the Central Intelligence, the DCI, Director of Central Intelligence, and its longest-serving director of the DCI. On August 23rd, 1951, he was promoted to Deputy Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Now get this. Dulles, who served as the director of the DCI from 1953 to 1961, played a significant role in the CIA's early handling of UFOs, focusing primarily on national security implications and the management of public perception about UFOs during the Cold War. Okay, how would you get a job like that? By being in the know and helping to recover UFOs. The more you dig, the more you find, including, I found a possible third American that led the retrieval of the Magenta UFO. His name is William J. Donovan. Okay, who is he? Even quicker. He is best known for serving as the head of OSS, the precursor to the Bureau of Intelligence and Research and the Central Intelligence Agency. During World War II, he was regarded as one of the founding fathers. I'm sorry, that was all during World War II. Next sentence. God, Kurt, this is a terrible outline. He is regarded as one of the founding fathers of the CIA. In 1998, in a UFO magazine, so grain of salted, there was a peculiar article that was written by a person nicknamed Sedge Masters. If you go down a rabbit hole for Sedge Masters, you're going to find that a lot of people have a lot of theories about who Sedge Masters actually was. It has been speculated in the UFO communities that it was someone who had direct knowledge about UFO crash retrieval programs. What Sedge was saying back in 1998 has since been proven again and again and again, kind of like what Bob Lazar did, where as we get more and more evidence or more and more Freedom of Information Act documents, we go, oh crap, what he was saying back then was true. So there are a lot of people in the community that think this guy 100% had direct knowledge of UFO crash retrieval programs. In this article, it says, and it includes the recovery from Roswell as well, but in this article it says, during the years preceding World War II, informal contacts made by Americans touring in Europe tasked to do so by then attorney William Donovan, who was later the head of the OSS in World War II, revealed that there had been a number of sightings of unusual aerial phenomena and craft over European skies, particularly in the vicinity of German military facilities. Blah, 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 skipping ahead. In retrospect, the most ominous of the reports claimed that a downed saucer-like craft of indeterminate origin was recovered by Wehrmacht troops in the days immediately preceding Germany's invasion of Poland. Skipping ahead, the rush of events focused the attention of the military and the OSS on other matters or more pressing concerns, although it has been resolved to look into these reports again at the war's conclusion. Skipping ahead, we go to multiple documents, including one being an alleged memorandum written by Franklin Delano Roosevelt on February 27, 1942, to George Marshall, who was the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army. In this document, FDR said that he authorized Vannevar Bush to proceed with the project on the issue of, quote, finding practical uses for atomic secrets learned from the study of celestial devices. Later, people connected this to two other UFO crashes from Cape Girardeau, in 1941, and San Bernardino in 1942, but I'm going to stay on magenta here. In this document, FDR says that the only people who should know this information are George Marshall, Vannevar Bush, Henry Stimson, and William Donovan, who again was in charge of Project McGregor, which expedited, quote, the liberation of Italy and vetted Italian scientists to bring to the U.S. to work with Vannevar Bush alongside German scientists, supposedly on, you guessed it, the magenta craft. So now we can connect Roosevelt to this magenta craft. There is so much stuff that has come out since 1998. But there's been so much stuff that has been coming out, trickling out little by little by little since 1933 that proves there was something that crashed in Magenta, Italy. No one knows what it was, and it was claimed by the Americans and brought back on. How much of this could I 100% prove in front of like a congressional hearing? Not 100%, I can tell you that, but it does keep coming up decade after decade and decade with new unknown documents that corroborate more and more of those details going all the way back to 1933. So based on a lot of evidence, again, it appears the UFO was retrieved from Magenta, made its way to the U.S. So where? That's the part of this episode. And here's where too many rabbit holes led to Kurt's brain frying out. But I think here's the trail. There's one document that says, after being transported to Area 51 and then moved to a defense contractor's warehouse. Kurt here, let's pause right there. I said, well, that can't be. That timeline doesn't make sense. Area 51 didn't open until 1955. So I checked into that. I went down that rabbit hole, and yeah, it's true. Mining at Groom Lake continued until 1918, then resumed after World War II and continued until the early 1950s. The airfield on the Groom Lake site opened in 1942 as Indian Springs Air Force Auxiliary Field. So the airfield was there, but the war didn't end until 1945. It didn't, the U.S. didn't liberate Italy until 1944. So I don't think that a UFO was sent to Area 51. Obviously, it wasn't Area 51 at all at that point. It would have been Groom Lake. But even at Groom Lake, at that point, it would have just been the Indian Springs Air Force Auxiliary Field. It's 11 years too early. The paper said they recovered a partially intact vehicle, and the Italian government moved it to a secure airbase in Italy until around 1944 to 1945. So again, I think Area 51 is out. Okay, so where then? Well, not surprisingly, the next best guess isn't a defense contractor's warehouse, but a warehouse in Dayton, Ohio. word got out that something was transported from the West Coast. So I think it did make it to California or Nevada, but somewhere on the West Coast. My guess, honestly, would have been California. And then they realized the significance of it, and it was moved to Dayton, Ohio. Dayton, Ohio is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. For those that don't know, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has been linked, and in my opinion, accurately, to everything alien, to everything UFO. I'll get to Wright-Patterson, don't worry. So, then I found a story about magenta alien recovery bodies. And yep, it led to Dayton, Ohio, and actually named Wright-Patterson Base. Take this with a grain of salt, obviously. 2 bodies allegedly lay on a table. They look like twins. They're dead and preserved with formaldehyde. The bodies are in bad shape. They look like victims of a bad car crash, but the heads remain intact. But their features trouble a French biologist who was invited to study the bodies in Europe. 2 males, very tall, around 7 feet, long blonde hair, very high and spacious foreheads, clear blue eyes that look somewhat Asiatic, small noses, small mouth, small chin, thin lips, very clear pale skin, but no sign of facial hair. Their hands, though slender, are human-like. Their toes are small and their feet flat. Then the story gets weirder. Their skin appears perfectly white but shows no sign of keratin granules, which play an important role in providing natural moisturization for the skin, in addition to UV protection and water retention. Startlingly, the biologists discovered that their lymphatic system were dominant and practically replaced the blood system, providing a high degree of protection from any diseases. Then there's another document. Grain of salt, this one too. They were not human, at least as we know it. There are 2 accounts of these alleged recovery bodies within Wright-Patterson. There we go. So, the first one of these accounts was from William Brophy, whose father claimed to have seen the bodies when he served as lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson. Brophy claimed that his father told him the story among those of other UFO encounters while serving in the United States Air Force. The second account, or eyewitness account, if you will, is from the UAP researcher Leonard Stringfield, who told the story of the French biologist in his 1982 book named UFO Crash and Retrievals, Amassing the Evidence, Status Report 3. Okay. He says U.S. officials allegedly confirmed to the French biologist that the bodies were not human and were of extraterrestrial origin. After much hesitancy and many years later, the biologist decided to tell his story, and his account was told by Stringfield. So, I looked into Leonard Stringfield. I would definitely take his stuff with a grain of salt. I would definitely say that he likes to flourish his stories. But a lot of the stuff that he talks about, again, is getting confirmed decades later. I think that he was onto stuff, and I think he just liked to embellish a little bit. So let's stick with Wright-Patterson for a little bit longer on this episode. Let's move in to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. All signs for the magenta one seem to say they eventually made their way to Wright-Patterson. Here we go. The basics. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is located just east of Dayton, Ohio. If you were to just type in Wright-Patterson UFO in Google, well, enjoy the days it would take you to read everything, because it's all connected to UFOs. Wright-Patterson has always been connected to UFOs. The Roswell crash. Those bodies made their way to Wright-Patterson, where presidents went to, and we know they went to, and went into hangars and then talked about viewing dead alien bodies from Roswell. The Roswell UFO was packed up, went to Texas, and then moved to Wright-Patterson. There's been a number of UFO retrievals that end with the Glock bell made its way to Wright-Patterson. It's another UFO. If you don't know about it, I did an episode a long time ago about it. I personally think that it was a Nazi. They re-engineered a UFO. Nazis re-engineered a UFO, and it crashed when we were testing it. When Americans were testing it, it crashed in Pennsylvania. It is in it went to Wright-Patterson after it crashed. But I have heard of Wright-Pat, as I'm going to call it from this point on, because it's too long of a title. I've heard of Wright-Pat and UFOs and aliens since the 80s. Here's my own personal story. Take it for all you want. Grain of salt it all you want. I dated a girl. Her brother dated another girl. That girl's dad worked at Wright-Pat, and boy, did she love to talk about all the weird stuff her dad told her about working at Wright-Patterson. I'm talking about heads-up displays, which I know existed in the 80s, but not the way that she was describing it. It's like the heads-up displays that you now see our pilots have on, B-2 bombers and experimental planes, like the stuff we get now in the 2025s. I get it. Heads-up displays have been around since the 60s. This isn't what she was talking about. She was talking about high-tech stuff, to me, in the 80s, and all of it turned out to be true. She also talked about fiber optics. She talked about hologram people that looked like, that Tupac hologram. She said that her dad would go on a base, go down, so going underground, which I'll get to in a little bit, and the receptionist would be a hologram person. And get this, I kid you not. She would talk about plugging people into the internet from the base of their necks. This was like 1989, probably 1990, maybe. I don't even know. Let's see. Probably about 89, 90. Look, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't the Matrix or any of that stuff. Yet, here's a young Kurt with his girlfriend and her brother, who this girl's dating, and this girl is just telling us all this crazy crap that is coming out of Wright-Patterson from her dad, who was in the know and did work at Wright-Patterson. So, yeah, if you lived anywhere near Wright-Patterson, I grew up in Michigan, which isn't exactly close. It's a few hours away, but I don't know, maybe 2 hours away. But if you lived anywhere near Wright-Patterson, you heard crazy stories from people that were there. And it might just be, there's a billion stories online of people that worked at Wright-Patterson that were allowed to go to this level but couldn't go any lower, or were told to guard this shack, and the shack was literally just air vents for vast underground hangars and buildings at Wright-Patterson. It's not a guess that there are underground buildings and hangars at Wright-Patterson. It's a fact, but I'll get to them in a little bit. Again, I could do an entire episode of just on people online that worked at Wright-Patterson in some capacity, HVAC people or contractors and the crazy crap they saw, but that's a different episode. So let's get to some stories about UFOs and Wright-Patterson from people that worked there at Wright-Patterson. First up is a woman named June Crane. I've actually talked about her before in a previous episode a long time ago, but here it is again. She was confirmed to have worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at various times between 1942 and 1952 as a clerk typist. The year before she died, in 1998, she said that flying saucers crashed from New Mexico, that's Roswell, and bodies were recovered and then sent to Wright-Patterson. The UFO, the wreckage, and the bodies were recovered, and based on what she heard while from working there, were sent to Wright-Patterson. She said that while working there, she heard about the flying saucer crashes and recovery of alien bodies from a colleague one morning in the coffee room. She said there was almost immediate censorship following the leak of this information. She claimed she was shown a piece of material from a spaceship that was extremely lightweight but was extremely tough. If you're into this show or UFOs in general, you'll know about this kind of really light-looking aluminum foil kind of material, or like emergency blanket kind of material that you could not cut, you could not rip, you can't burn. And if you crumple it up, it'll go right back to the form. It'll uncrumple itself back to the same form. This stuff has been talked about forever, and this woman held a piece of it. She was actually handed a piece of it and got to play around with it for a minute. She talked to Police Detective Clarkson. I can't think of his first name. James Clarkson, sorry. Police Detective James Clarkson, who interviewed her, like I said, the year before she died, all about her time at Wright-Patterson. And guess what? Since then, it's all checked out. She did 100% work there. There is no doubt that she worked where she said she did, for when the times that she said she did, and the people that she talked about all turned out to be true. She also provided information about other classified projects, which was not public knowledge at 1998, but has since come out and confirmed to be true, which you'll hear about in a minute. So, Detective James Clarkson firmly believes she was telling the truth, and as do I, but here he is talking about his interviews with her.
Told me, for instance, that the bodies were stored in the AeroMed lab. She also told me about the morning that a friend of hers, who was he was a master sergeant who was flying on military cargo planes. She said she knew all these people. In fact, she gave me one of this old Polaroid photo that was fading of some of the pilots that she knew, all in a group photo. I still have that photo. And one of them came in one morning and he was very upset. And they were all having coffee together. And everybody said, well, what's wrong? And this man says, his name was Master Sergeant Clarence. We never, in fact, got his last name, but I even have a picture of his wedding, which June gave me, which was on the base. Well, Master Sergeant Clarence says, well, there was a crash in New Mexico, and we brought back bodies and pieces of wreckage. And this is one of those really strange conversations, because everybody at the table assumed that he was talking about perhaps someone that they knew who had died in an accident involving a military aircraft. And so they're having this conversation, and he finally says, you don't understand. They're not human. And he said they were like the size of children, and they were kind of a blue-gray color. You know, that was one of her remarkable revelations. So, you know, there were a few anecdotes like that. It's not, this is why I described June as a key corroborating witness to Roswell. She talked to me about working on something called Project Caucasian. At the time that she died in 1998, I asked other UFO researchers, what is Project Caucasian? Have you ever heard of it? Nobody had any idea what I was talking about. 2 or 3 years later, it got declassified. Project Caucasian was a code name for the engineering effort to construct a parachute harness that would hold a hydrogen bomb when it was dropped out of the back end of a bomber. She talked to scientists and engineers who were directly involved in UFOs. They had been present in the Southwest doing research on our early rocket program. They came back with stories talking about how they felt they were under surveillance by UFOs while they were there. They went on from there. They said they would no longer report them officially, because every time they made a UFO report, they got locked up for 24 hours and debriefed. And after you've had to repeat the same story 15 times and have people tell you you didn't see what you saw, you quit reporting them. I mean, that's easy. Amongst themselves, they still talked about UFOs. An officer came in one day who was clearly flirting with her, pulled a piece of metal out of his pocket that weighed nothing, that was indestructible, and invited June to tear it up. She couldn't do anything to it. She couldn't cut it, couldn't dent it. You wadded it up into a ball, it returns to its original shape, flows like water. Everybody in the UFO field knows what that is. That's the Holy Grail. That's the memory metal. That's the metal that everybody wants, and nobody quite knows how to get it. But June actually handled a piece of it. And when the officer, after he was done showing it to her, June says, what is this? And the guy says, it's a piece of a spaceship. And she says, oh, come on, what is it really? And the guy says, it's a piece of a spaceship. And about that time, another officer walks through the room. He grabs it, sticks it in his pocket, and pretends like they weren't talking. Well, June's story goes on from there. There's numerous details. And the thing was, what she had not told me, she claimed that her cancer was in remission. It apparently wasn't that much in remission. But I remember when I first got to talk to her again in 1997, I said, why are you willing to talk to me now? And you weren't willing to talk to me 4 years ago. She says, I'm 72 years old. My cancer's in remission. I've outlived 2 husbands. What are they going to do? Shoot me or put me in prison? I can do either one. Well, I mean, that's my kind of witness. You know, I mean, she's like the dream witness. But this is the case that I knew had the biggest potential implications of anything that I was ever involved in. Although the crazy part was that, unfortunately, sadly, in the middle of 1998, she died. She told me.
So I agree with him. I think she was a brilliant witness. Like I said, I did an episode about her a long time ago. Feel free to find that episode. These are the people that are still out there. And I know that anybody that worked in 1942 has probably passed on. But there's still a chance. There is still a chance that there are people that worked at Wright-Patterson, worked on the Roswell crash or the Magenta crash, that are still alive. And they're getting to that point. They're dying off constantly. They're getting to that point where we are going to run out of first-person eyewitnesses to these kinds of crashes and these kind of retrievals and these kind of UFOs and aliens. And it saddens me that they aren't stepping up like June did. They are not being the hero that June was, and they're taking it to their graves. And I really, really hope that 1 or 2 of them that are still left at least put it in video. Put it on video, or, you know, have your grandkid or whatever put it on video for you and have it released after your death. This information is vital to prove disclosure. And it's sad that it's going away. So yeah, I would say she is a very credible witness with tons of proof. She worked there, what she said she did. Yeah, it's just, it bums me out that had I been doing this, obviously there were no podcasts in the 90s, but had I started this podcast in the 90s, I might have been able to talk to some of these people. But a lot of people say there is proof and evidence, again, of vast underground hangars or rooms under Wright-Pat. It's known. Like I said, the ventilation shafts for air can be seen. People that work there in construction mentioned it decades ago. If you go on Google Earth and look at Wright-Patterson, they tell you exactly which hangar to look at. It's a normal hangar. The normal hangars have like one HVAC unit. There is one hangar that they tell you to look at. You can find it online. It's very easy to find. Where you go to Google Earth and it's got like 10 or 12 or 20 or something crazy amount like that. HVAC units on the top, because that is the main one to pump air and recycle all the air to most of the underground facilities under Wright-Patterson. It's crazy. It's cool. Like I said, you could go down a rabbit hole of just Wright-Patterson. I could do an episode on just Wright-Patterson, which I kind of already have on this episode, but there's so much to talk about when it comes to Wright-Patterson, including the space pancake that I talked about on the last episode, which is supposedly still held at Wright-Patterson. I would love to figure out how to become an archivist of some of the historical stuff they have at Wright-Patterson. I know they wouldn't after listening to this episode, after listening to this podcast, but to be able to do that, just to walk through the archives at Wright-Patterson, it's got to just be incredible. If you work at Wright-Patterson or can get me a tour of Wright-Patterson at any time, please reach out to me, paranormalalmanac@gmail.com. I will fly out to Wright-Patterson and do a tour at any time. There's an Air Force museum at Wright-Patterson that I've been told is absolutely incredible and kind of gives you, you get to go into Wright-Patterson. But apparently it's just absolutely incredible. If you even have the slightest of interest in aviation history or UFO history, it just seems to be incredible. But what else is there? Well, Other people talk about two areas at Wright-Patterson that are supposedly known to have had alien wreckage stored and studied there. I'll be honest, another thing I haven't even brought up, I'm at like an hour and something into this episode. You know what else was done at Wright-Patterson? It should have been like the first thing I said about it. Project Blue Book was stationed at Wright-Patterson. It was stationed there. J. Allen Hynek worked there, for God's sake. Sorry. But yeah, getting back to those two locations of Wright-Pat, best rumor to have held UFOs. Let me get into a little bit. We're going to go back in history. We're going to start back at this from January 11th, 1950. Variety, that's right, Variety had an article called Air Force Asked 20 Questions by Frank Scully. Question number 4, did the Air Force ever make public what the, quote, explosives looking like a dismantled flying saucer were, which they transported in Army trucks from a Western research base to Dayton, Ohio? Okay, so it doesn't mention Wright-Patterson by name, but it was 100% Wright-Patterson. And what they're talking about in that is things that looked like dismantled flying saucer were seen heading into Western Research Base in Dayton, Ohio, which is Wright-Patterson, by people. And when they were questioned about it in the 1950, the government said, oh, no. Those were experimental ordnance or explosives. It has nothing to do with the fact that they look exactly like a flying saucer. Is obvious bullshit cover-up. BS cover-up. Obvious BS cover-up. But in 1950, people were seeing this stuff heading into Wright-Patterson. Then, in Behind the Flying Saucers, Frank Scully talks with Silas Newton and Dr. G about for an interview. And he asked, Silas Newton asked, "Where's the little ship?" "We have that one in the laboratories at the present time," replied Dr. G. "As soon as I get your appointment through, I'll be able to authorize you to let you inspect it." So they're talking about ships, tiny, smaller UFOs at Wright-Patterson in this thing. In time, Newton's appointment came through, but by then the ship had been dismantled and reportedly shipped to Dayton, Ohio, and all comment thereafter prescribed, denied, or ignored. Dayton was referred to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Queries indicate that the flying saucers were dismantled in New Mexico and Arizona and shipped back to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, and never heard of since. Then, in 1953, there was a story circulating among UFO researchers and, enthusiasts that there was a captured flying saucer similar to what Scully was just talking about that was held in secret by the Air Force at Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio. Pan American World Airways pilot Bill Nash became heavily involved in flying saucers and UFOs back in the day after his own encounter on July 14th of 1952, known as the Nash-Fortenberry UFO sighting, and he frequently mentioned Wright Field and UFOs in his correspondences. So, yeah, Wright Field, when he would talk about, when he would do conferences, UFO conventions back in the day, which must have been just crazy to go to a UFO convention in the 50s and 60s and 40s. But this guy who's had his own UFO sighting and was a pilot mentioned Wright Field again and again and again and again. Then, in his October 19th, 1953 letter to Major Donald Kehoe, Bill Nash discussed two rumors from an anonymous source involving captured discs. While appearing on a WJZ television program in the fall of 1952 to discuss UFOs, before the program, some tall man took me down the TV hall. He said that the reason that the saucers were over Washington in droves in July was because the Air Force had operated a radio found in a cracked-up saucer. That Wright Field story was true. The Air Force had several saucers at that point. So what he's talking about there is, in the 1950s, all of a sudden, UFOs were seen all over Washington. I did an episode about that, Washington, D.C., that is. I did an episode about that a long time ago, too. But he said the reason that they were seen in droves over Washington, D.C. was because the Air Force had operated a radio found in a cracked up or crashed flying saucer at Wright Field. All connects. It all makes sense. Then, in 1954, in his letter, April 18th, 1954, he then went into rumors that basically created the Hangar 18 legend, which is a big site at Wright-Patterson. At Wright-Patterson. He told Hull about his Miami lecture that he started, quote, the hardware controversy, and repeated the WJZ story that he told Kehoe about meeting the mysterious man with saucer secrets. Nash reports how his friend Norman Bean had been told by an Air Force major that there was a saucer at Wright Field. He also said he had several reports from GIs who saw the thing on a flat car, and Nash goes on to tell about hearing what he considered to be a deathbed confession about the Wright Field story, how a flying saucer had been found after landing, and the thing had been brought to Wright Field. Still in 1954, Bill Nash had heard about a captured saucer and which was widely circulated, and reached Jim Moseley, who was the publisher of Saucer News. It was called Nexus back then. It's a UFO magazine. From April to May of 1954, Jim heard the story and tape recordings from Jean Wolfer about a woman from the Army who was sick with cancer, and through detective work, Moseley tracked down the source to interview her. It is not June Crane. This is another woman who worked at Wright-Patterson in the 50s who was dying of cancer. Her name was Vivian Walton. She was a former civilian employee of the Signal Corps of Army at Wright-Patterson. She said that in 1952, a landed, unmanned saucer was taken through Columbus Army Supply Depot, where it was photographed before being taken to Wright Field. Moseley checked with a photographer she named, who described Walton as a night girl on the teletype, and he said he was unable to confirm her saucer story. She did seem sincere, and she also talked about little bodies and the saucer's magnetic propulsion that she shouldn't have had knowledge to. So basically what they said was her job was teletype, which is to type out a bunch of the same things over and over and over again, basically reports to be sent off here, here, and here, and here. So even though she didn't have the clearance to see these UFOs directly, what she was typing out, all of these classified documents, she was looking at as she was typing them. She was reading them, and she's like, holy crap, they're talking about saucers' magnetic propulsion, alien bodies, where the UFOs came from, where they stopped and photographed for the files. All of this she saw as she worked at Wright-Pat. Then, 1955, the Flying Saucer Council of America's magazine, the Vimana, from March 15th, 1955, published a story called Mexican Saucer Landing of 1949 Appears Verifiable, from 3 different sources. All right. 2 versions of the Silas Newton story are given as corroboration, then a secondhand story from anonymous man's son. His son revealed to him when he was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a huge semi-truck came into the air base with heavily canopied material jutting out of immense size. It was shortly driven to a far hangar. Then it's a big question mark. Someone says question number 27, hangar 27, where no windows or accessible doors would be discerned. Then on October 20th, 1955, Flying Saucers News Service Research Bulletin has a rumor. They said not only was the hangar unnumbered, the name of the base wasn't disclosed, just that the saucers were being housed in a hangar near the northeast section or sector at an Eastern Air Force base in Ohio. So, Wright-Patterson. Hold on. Then, 1966, John Fuller wrote a book called Incident Exeter, and he repeated a rumor that says, there have been, I learned after I started the research, frequent and continual rumors, and they are only rumors, that in a morgue at Wright-Patterson Field, Dayton, Ohio, lie the bodies of a half-dozen or so small humanoid corpses, measuring not more than 4.5 feet in height. Evidence of one of the few times an extraterrestrial spaceship has allowed itself to either fail or otherwise fall in the clutches of Earth people. Keep on keeping on. 1994, in an interview conducted by Larry King, this is batshit crazy. Sorry, didn't mean to swear. This is crazy. Larry King did a broadcast on CNN about Area 51, which I'm going to play for you in just a bit, but I want to read it to you too because it gets a little crackly at the end. It was broadcast on CNN with Senator Barry Goldwater, and Barry Goldwater said, I think at Wright-Patterson, if you could get into certain places, you'd find out what the Air Force and the government does know about UFOs. Reportedly, a spaceship landed. It was all hushed up. I called Curtis LeMay and said, General, I know we have a room at Wright-Patterson where you put all this secret stuff. Could I go in there? I've never heard General LeMay get mad, but he got madder than hell at me, cussed me out, and said, don't ever ask me that question again. All right, here's that clip from the really bizarre Larry King Area 51 show. You can watch most of it on YouTube. The UFO cover-up, live from Area 51. That's me, Kurt. I'm just reading what it says on the screen.
We're back in Rachel, Nevada. Our phone numbers are 800-448-3900. 800-448-3900. How much stock do you put in the word of your fellow man? That's really the central question in the UFO debate. Whether to believe the witnesses who step forward and say they saw some hair-raising thing to tell, how good are they? You decide. But first, listen to one of our most distinguished national leaders. He's talked to plenty of witnesses, and he's made his decision.
I think the government does know.
Barry Goldwater, senator, presidential candidate, and believer.
I can't back that up, but I think that at Wright-Patterson Field, if you could get into certain places, you'd find out what the Air Force and the government knows about UFOs.
From his ham radio shack outside Phoenix, the senator disclaims direct knowledge of UFOs, but he does confirm a disturbing story about an exchange with General Curtis LeMay.
Reportedly, a spaceship landed, and it was all hushed up, quieted, and nobody ever, I've never heard about much of it. I called Curtis LeMay, and I said, General, I know we have a room at Wright-Patterson where you put all this secret stuff. Can I go in there? I've never heard him get mad, but he got madder than hell at me, cussed me out, said, don't ever ask me that question again.
Taxes.
Stop. You're not playing no commercials. No commercials on my podcast. All right. So like I said, it gets a little crackly. That's why I wanted to read it out to you again. But he said, I called Curtis LeMay and said, General, I know we have a room at Wright-Patterson where you put all this secret stuff. Could I go in there? I've never heard General LeMay get mad, but he got madder than hell at me, cussed me out, and said, don't ever ask me that question again. So, yeah. Wright-Patterson comes up a lot connected to recovered UFOs, like I said. But let's deep dive in Wright-Patterson for a bit, talk about Hangar 18 if I can find anything, and the Blue Room if I can find anything. And I was surprised. It's a lot harder to find specifics about both of these places that are supposedly, just well-known. They're not official, but are they well-known? Or are they official? Because let's do Hangar 18 first. Do I think there's a hangar called Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? Me personally, Kurt, here? No. Do I think there is something nicknamed Hangar 18? Oh, 100%. I think that officially they are right when they say there is no Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Except for if you go to, they all say it, Hangar 18 supposedly doesn't exist. But Wright-Patterson uses an alien head logo for their Hangar 18 program, where supposedly there's an underground lab. And you can actually see their Hangar 18 logo on their Hangar 18 LinkedIn page. Is it a real LinkedIn page? I don't know. I don't know how to find out if it's real other than apply for a job with them, but I don't want a job with them. I mean, maybe I do if it was, picking up the work of J. Allen Hynek and Project Blue Book. Yeah, sign me up. I can deep dive, as you can see from this episode, I can deep dive with the best of them. But the first mention of Hangar 18 I could find was a 1974 Tampa Tribune article that I'll get to in just a little bit. But before I get to that, feel free to check out that Hangar 18 LinkedIn page, and you tell me if it's real or not. See if you can get a connection on LinkedIn to it. I don't know how much I want to put into that, but I don't know. Many UFO researchers, though, believe that some of the materials from Roswell, like I talked about, were ultimately transported to Wright-Patterson after the crash and stored in Hangar 18, based on a crap ton of, I'll just call it, unsubstantiated reports from former military pilots. There are tons of these reports about, yes, we went to, from Roswell to Texas and Texas up to Wright-Patterson, or we dropped off the bodies at this location in California that ultimately made it to Wright-Patterson. There's tons and tons and tons of these. Can I prove any of them? Honestly, no. But there's one, a guy named Oliver Henderson, who told his wife that he flew a plane loaded with debris along with several small alien bodies, ultimately from Roswell to Wright Field. Then there is a kid from another pilot, Marion Black Mac Magruder. They said that their dad claimed to have seen a living alien at Wright Field in 1947 and told them it was a shameful thing that the military destroyed this creature by conducting tests on it. And if that's true, and I think it is, I personally think it is, yes, I agree. That is horrific. 1974, a Florida ufologist named Robert Spencer Carr publicly claimed that the Air Force was hiding 2 flying saucers of unknown origin inside Wright-Patterson Hangar 18. This brings me to that Tampa Tribune article I was just about to talk about from 1974 that I mentioned a minute ago, I should say. The Tampa Tribune, January 16th, 1974. Does USAF have UFOs? By Frank Bettigneau. Or Bentano? I don't know. One of the best-kept secrets of the United States government is that in Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base near Dayton, Ohio, there are 2 flying saucers of unknown origin. This coming from a University of South Florida instructor who said, yeah, Hangar 18 is real. 2 UFOs are there. And Hangar 18, I got to say, it never stops popping up. I'll put it that way. While I definitely don't think that is an official Hangar 18, that title or that name pops up decade after decade, year after year. So before I leave the Hangar 18 part to go to the Blue Room, there's actually a Hangar 18 Wikipedia page. Let me briefly go through that. In UFO conspiracy theories, Hangar 18 is a name given to a building that allegedly contains UFO debris and or alien bodies. It was popularized by conspiracy theorist Robert Spencer Carr in 1974, who claimed the hangar was located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base near Dayton, Ohio. USAF denies the existence of this hangar. In 1966, Incident Exeter, there is a one-sentence mention of a crashed saucer tale about alien bodies and a morgue that I talked already about. In popular culture, it's been filmed on In Search Of. Megadeth 1990s album Rust in Peace includes a song called Hangar 18. They talk about it in Star Trek. The hip-hop group Hangar 18 came out in the early 2000s. The Simpsons talked about it. It's mentioned in the song Skyfall by Halloween. It gets mentioned a lot, but there's not a lot of information on the, not surprisingly, on the Wikipedia page. But again, if you want to go down rabbit holes, I would start with Wright-Patterson, then I'd go to Hangar 18, and then I'd go to the Blue Room, because that's next up for Hangar 18. Again, not a ton of information about it. This won't be kind of quick. There's the Blue Room. It's a blue hangar or underground room that held UFOs or perhaps just the alien bodies. The earliest mention I can find of it is the Secretary of Air Force, Harold Brown, appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on Armed Services in Washington, D.C., March 31st, 1966. After discussing other topics, the chairman turned to the upcoming unidentified flying objects hearing by Committee on Armed Services to be held on April 5th, 1966, which was an inquiry requested by Gerald Ford, who at that time was Michigan representative, who then went on to become a president, in case you're not up on American presidents. Brown answered a few questions in preparation for the inquiry. Secretary Brown, we have an investigation going. Of course, we have been doing this since 1948. You know, Mr. Chairman, and in 1965, for example, we investigated almost 900 UFO reports. We will put out a written report which the committee can use to answer these questions. Whether we will ever satisfy all the people who have seen or think they have seen unidentified flying objects, I doubt, but I think we should at least satisfy the committee and the Congress. The chairman said, yes, sir. Mr. Blanford said, may I suggest to have the officer in charge of this program at Wright-Patterson here Tuesday morning to indicate that we did have the people who had it. What did they call it? The Blue Room? And Secretary Brown said, Blue Book? Mr. Blanford said, have the individual here so it can appear on the record. So, did they mean Project Blue Book? Blue Book? Project Blue Book? Were they talking about J. Allen Hynek? I don't know. I can't find a definitive answer, and it was driving me crazy. I spent 2 days alone trying to figure out what the hell they were talking about. Was it Blue Room or was it Blue Book? But this is the first incident that I can find of a blue room at Wright-Patterson. Now, did a bunch of ufologists just latch onto this and be like, Blue Room? What is the Blue Room? They're talking about the government said Blue Room and run with it. Or is there really a blue room? I don't know. Like I said, I tried for a few days to kind of figure out, did J. Allen Hynek ever get called in at around 1966 to answer questions? And I think so, but I don't know for sure, and I can't find any video of it. But if you can find it, send it to me. I'd like to see it. Anyhow, there is this third-hand story, so you know how much I love that. Grain of salt it. And it says, our only peek inside the Blue Room comes to us from the late Leonard Stringfield, again, who reprinted a second-hand account of such a visit told to him by a high-ranking officer. Stringfield referred to the Blue Room as, quote, the inner sanctum, a place that was a veritable museum holding the artifacts of crashed saucers and the retrieved cadavers from Roswell. Pause right here, Kurt here. Yeah, there are reports that presidents would be taken to Wright-Patterson to a building that was like a museum of UFOs with alien bodies. And they were shown fairly openly. So that makes sense to me, and I think it is the Blue Room. It goes on to say, in 1955, my friend was working as a scientific research analyst in Texas, working on radar equipment. One evening at home, an MP pulled up to his house and informed my friend that he had to accompany him. He was taken to a local Air Force base and held in a secure area with others involved in various fields of research. The first order of business was signing of secrecy non-disclosure papers. Then they were led to an aircraft seated along with armed guards wearing uniforms with no ID labels or identifiable insignias. The flight lasted several hours, and it was dark when they landed. They were led blindfold from the plane, and after a short walk, they stopped. Then they heard a hangar door brought down behind them and were told to remove their blindfolds. At this point, my friend's voice always quivered when he told the story. When they removed the blindfolds, they were inside a converted aircraft hangar. The floors and walls were painted entirely blue. Around the room were tables, shelves, and fixtures holding thousands of artifacts, none of which were instantly recognizable. They were told that they were to study each object and determine its purpose, operating parameters, and whether or not it can be duplicated. Looking back, he now recognizes many things such as lasers, integrated circuits, printed circuit boards of now commonplace design, including microprocessors and surface mount components, etc. When someone finally asked where the artifacts came from, they were led to a small locked room that heretofore not seen, and shown 4 large aquariums filled with pink solution. Each contained a small body with gray skin, oversized cranium, huge eyes, and no hair. In the back of this room were pieces of metal ranging from little slivers to very large twisted chunks. The curator then related the story of the Roswell crash. That's huge. But unfortunately, again, that's Leonard Stringfield talking to somebody who heard it from another person. So it's a big UFO telephone game, if you will. But still, if even only 60% of that is accurate, that's freaking huge. Then there are Freedom of Information Acts that prove that there was a real room at Wright-Patterson, but was it nicknamed Blue Room? Was it just a room that was blue? Is that why they called it the Blue Room? And they said that in the Freedom of Information Acts, they said that evidence was, quote, destroyed there. And then there are things that are tangentially connected to the Blue Room, like in the MJ-12 documents, take them for what they're worth, in the table of where to take various types recovered items. Most of it goes to, quote, Area 51S4. Things that may be considered a curiosity, such as personal items or dead bodies, go to Blue Lab WP-61. Blue Lab Wright-Patterson. More of a museum kind of a thing than stuff that can be reverse engineered for the military. But I'll be honest, that's about the best I can find without, again, really taking you down some rabbit holes that are huge grains of salts. That is on as far as the Blue Room is concerned. But again, do I think there's a Hangar 18? I think there is a unofficial Hangar 18. I don't think it's designated Hangar 18. I think it has actually moved around a couple of times. If you actually go down those rabbit holes of where they kept it, people think they know it's Hangar 27, I think it is, where exactly this stuff happened. And then it was moved to this hangar, and this hangar, and this moved to this and that, and it goes underground, and you can only go underground so far, but if you can have the right clearance, then you go down even farther. I do think that it has been moved around extensively since the 50s and 60s, and why wouldn't it? Of course it was. I think that at one point there was 100% a Blue Room and 100% a hangar where they had Roswell bodies and crashes. Yeah, I really do. But let's keep on keeping on. Let's go to one last grain of salt story that made the rounds online before moving on. Well, you'll find out in the story where we're going to move on to. Grain of salt theory. It says, looks like this is how it might have went, logically and also from my research. Now, this is the person typing it online. This is not me. Looks like this is how it might have went, logically and also from my research. Alien bodies arrived at Wright-Patterson Hangar 23. This is, Hangar 23 is the one I was thinking of. At Wright-Patterson Hangar 23. This is where the bodies are analyzed and tests are done. Through an underground tunnel, the alien bodies are then moved to Hangar 18, which would have been considered just a midway storage point for it. The bodies are then taken out of 18 and moved to Aero Medical Center Building 29 when they do an autopsy. Aero Medical Building Center 29 is real. I looked into that. This Kurt speaking. I said that part. Aero Medical Building is 29 is real. I checked into that. But back to the story. The bodies would then be permanently moved in storage in Building 18F cold storage. Pause here. It does appear that there is a Building 18F, and it does appear to, again, have more HVAC than it should technically need. Back to the story. Then, ultimately, years later, moved to Building 45 cryogenic storage. Kurt here. Again, from the little knowledge I have, it does appear that there is a Building 45, and it does appear to have more HVAC than it needs, but back to the story. There are corroborating stories with the Collins in the vaults at Wright-Patterson, where a man states that he saw an alien body badly cut up from an autopsy underneath Building 45. By then, that's obviously the later years cryogenic freeze. Okay. They kept the body in a pink building like Pepto-Bismol. Okay. Colonel George R. Weinbrenner apparently told a deathbed confession how there are 5 bodies in Utah now, which by deduction puts this as the last known spot from Wright-Patterson to most likely Dugway Proving Grounds, which leads us cleanly away from Wright-Patterson all the way over to Utah. And let's talk about, really quick overview of Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah. Okay. There is a huge military base, I'll tell you how big in just a little bit, in Utah called Dugway Proving Grounds. Unofficially, it's claimed that Dugway is home to Area 52, that once Area 51 basically got too well known and watched, that Dugway took over, and that they have alien and UFO. They have alien UFO logos, stuff all over their buildings in the base. They even call themselves Area 52, which is funny because they're kind of poking fun at all of the ufologists and being like, yep, we are Area 52. Look, we've got logos, blah, blah, blah. Fuck you. Oops, sorry. Screw you. But again, Area 52, well, oh crap, what's it called? Tonopah Test Range in Nevada and Palmdale, California, Plant 42, both also lean in to the Area 52 stuff and call themselves Area 52 as well. So the military seems to be having fun now with, almost like poking fun at the ufologists going, oh yeah, no, we are Area 52. Here's our patch. Here's our badge. We're Area 52. Oh, yeah, we've got spooky UFOs. I mean, they really are poking the bear or just don't give a crap anymore. Obviously, you can't get anywhere near Dugway or inside Dugway. It's just like an Air Force base in, like Wright-Patterson. But Dugway Proving Ground, Utah is mentioned right alongside Wright-Patterson a lot on supposedly what am I trying to say? Released or leaked. That's the word I was looking for. Supposedly leaked top secret documents say Dugway Proving Ground recovered UFO materials, recovered materials of non-human origin, recovered materials not of this earth, like all of that stuff. All of these leaked documents, that was the word I was looking for, all say it's at Dugway now, which is weird. They also mentioned Wright-Patterson, don't get me wrong, but Dugway more and more and more. There are claims that Dugway Proving Ground has been reverse engineering UFOs and exploiting, quote, technology of unknown origin. That's a big one they love to use when it comes to UFOs now. Instead of calling them UFOs or UAPs, now there's a new acronym out there so they can keep it out of the Freedom of Information Act. And it is TUO, Technology of Unknown Origin. Again, getting back to that, my personal feeling is they stopped calling UFOs UFOs so that if you sent in a Freedom of Information Act about a specific UFO incident, if they have it listed as a UAP in their files now, guess what? They can come back and cleanly say, nope, we have nothing about UFOs there. Then if you were to submit those same documents for UAPs, all of a sudden you might get something back. Well, now, if you say UFO or UAP, they could go, nope, we don't have any documents relating to that. But if you say, how about TUO? Oh, yeah, we have some documents. You might get some documents back about that. It is just a shell game to keep people from getting Freedom of Information Act stuff about disclosure. Anyhow, an in-depth investigation into Dugway Proving Grounds and the site's long history of involvement with UFO reverse engineering and technology of unknown origin, TUO, exploitation programs. It has a vast history of this, and there has been numerous investigations into it, and yet nothing substantial is really coming out of it. It really isn't. It is known from these investigations that the CIA and Lockheed Skunk Works moved out of Area 51 sometime around the late 90s. And they seem to have moved to Utah. The only place in Utah that they could have moved would be Dugway Proving Grounds. It seems to be pretty common knowledge. They don't say Dugway Proving Grounds, but where else in Utah would it be? And a lot of people online, if you go down that rabbit hole, seem to think technically it is Dugway Proving Grounds, but it's not. It is DUMB, which is DUMB, which stands for Deep Underground Military Bases at Dugway, or technically under Dugway. And there's a lot of people that looked into an investigation of a missing $2 trillion budget that seems to have been diverted to Utah from military bases on the West Coast. And they think this missing $2 trillion is for the building of DUMBs or underground interstates between DUMBs, which again is deep underground military bases. And there does seem to be some evidence to that, shockingly. There are interviews with truckers who say that they have military contracts and they have driven their trucks for an entire day in underground interstates between military bases. There does seem to be something about underground interstates that seems to be true. And video has gotten out. You can find videos on Reddit and YouTube. And it's not, I mean, it seems real, and they're old enough that it's pre-AI, and it does seem to be a crap ton of 18-wheelers going underground and then driving for a full day. It's bad. It's crazy. It's absolute insanity. This investigation also claimed that a DUMB in Utah was created to protect the president and upper governmental officials. Now, here's my problem with it. In the document, it says that there is a vast, deep, up to 1,300 square mile underground facility beneath Dugway, as described by Greer's NPC event on 6/12/2023. That's when Stephen Greer, who, grain of salt him big time, trust me, hosted an event on June 12, 2023 at the National Press Club, and he described a vast 1,300 square mile underground facility at Dugway Proving Ground in Utah. I think there are DUMBs. 100%. I know there are deep underground military bases. That's a fact. It's proven. It's true. I know that there are underground interstates. How vast they are is hard to say. Some people say they cross the entire country. And, you know, like the crap that Elon Musk is trying to do underneath Vegas is a small scale version of what these people have done since the 90s. But I don't personally think there is an underground base that is 1,300 square miles. I don't think that's an accurate number. Like I say, I think there are vast underground bases, and there's something under Dugway, 100%. It's the same thing that people see at Wright-Patterson with the vents and the HVACs. So there are underground things. That does not surprise me. It would not surprise me that there is a massive DUMB in Utah created to protect the president and the government officials. There's already one in Colorado we know about. So that doesn't surprise me. But what I think is Dugway itself is approximately 798,214 to 801,505 acres, which, if you do 801,505 acres, it is coincidentally around 1,300 square miles of high mountain desert. So I personally think that's where that number 1,300 square miles came from that Stephen Greer got. I don't personally think that there are 1,300 square miles under Utah that is a ginormous base. I think he misspoke, and people are taking it too literally. I think we need to take a step back as the UFO community needs to take a huge step back from, I know for a fact there's a 1,300 square mile facility underneath Dugway. It's been proven. No, it hasn't. I couldn't find anything that 100% proved it at all. But It is one of the largest U.S. Army installations. It is primarily used for testing chemical and biological defense weapons with extensive restricted land for testing equipment above and below ground. Boom. There is your dumb. It's real. Now, I'm not saying that it's the new Area 52. I'm not saying I could find anything that proved any of this, but get this. There is rabbit hole testimony, shall we say, that I do not like because it's of one M.S. So M period S period. They won't give a name, but they'll give you initials. MS, who stumbled upon a clandestine group of scientists and armed personnel engaging with a non-human craft in the Dugway-Avery region. And that's all they say. That's all they say. They just say that's one person came forward with the initials MS who just stumbled upon a clandestine group of scientists and armed personnel engaging with a non-human craft in the Dugway-Avery region. Why? It's huge enough that there should be nobody that stumbles upon it. So BS. Everything I can find out about Dugway is you're not getting into Dugway. You can maybe overlook Dugway, but you're not getting in Dugway in any way, shape, or form. Then there's this rabbit hole. The CIA and Lockheed Skunk Works moved out of Area 51 in 1997 and moved to the Utah. That has been known for a long time. Where in Utah has been the question since then, more and more and more, but that's about it without really going down rabbit holes, blah, 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 more indicators to a dumb at Dugway, blah, 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 blah. It just keeps going on and on and on again. These rabbit holes like to repeat themselves ad nauseum until you just go, oh, okay, I guess that's true. No. I'm not going to go down all of these rabbit holes. I know some of you want me to, and I know most of you are moving on, saying, like, God, for God's sakes, Kurt, move on. You talk too long about something you don't know about. And I agree with you. This episode is long enough as is. It ain't happening. So let's move on to a very late in the episode, paranormal news. That's right, paranormal news. UFO allegedly stored at East Coast Navy facility as material transfer claims resurface. This was released on January 13th, 2026 by Christopher Sharp. Liberation Times understands that an exotic vehicle of unknown origin has been stored for decades at a naval air station called Patuxent River or Pax River in Maryland. Bum, bum, bum. So now we have another military base where a UFO basically has been stored for decades at Pax River in Maryland. When asked, sources have declined to describe the vehicle or disclose where it was found. However, it is understood that contingency plans may be in place to relocate the alleged craft if its current location were to be publicly identified, which, yep, it just was January 13th, 2026. Pax River is home to the headquarters of the Naval Air Systems Command, or NAVAIR, and is a major center for naval aviation research, development, test, and evaluation. In 2020, the NAVAIR's Freedom of Information Reading Room became the official repository for the Gimbal and Go Fast UAPs. You all know about what those are, the Tic Tacs, the UFO, the Gimbals, all the UFOs that you've seen in the past couple of years in the congressional hearings. They are the official repository for these videos, which had circulated publicly for years before their formal release. NAVAIR describes its mission as providing full life cycle support for naval aviation aircraft, weapons, and systems used by sailors and Marines, covering research and development, acquisition, test and evaluation, and sustainment. Against that backdrop, certain Naval Air System Commands, NAVAIR program executives, the U.S. Navy's senior acquisition organization that manage major aviation portfolios, blah, 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 blah. Get to the good stuff. Here we go, including potential reverse engineering work. That is official. Recovered materials. That is official. They have been involved in efforts to analyze and exploit all alleged recovered materials, including reverse engineering work. That's huge. It talks about contractors that have, including like Lockheed Martin and the MITRE, the MITRE Corporation, which supposedly have both reverse engineered UFOs as well. It talks about ATIP and UAP programs. It talks about the written testimony in Congress. Lou Elizondo claimed Naval Air Station Pax River was among the sites prepared in connection with a transfer involving Lockheed Martin and Bigelow Aerospace reverse engineered items or vehicles. He further alleged that a hangar at the base was designed to facilitate the movement of future materials by air and by river. The transfer of materials, which ultimately supposedly never took place, was blocked by the CIA, according to the Elizondo. The CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology is said to be the original custodian of materials in question, which are believed to have been recovered from as far back as the 1950s. So, yeah, there you go. It's now been publicly released, so they probably are moving them away from Pax River. But it does seem that Pax River held UFOs and reverse engineered UFOs and technology since the 50s. It's insane. And it's not just one article. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of articles about top secret government records that reveal that Pax River did have these contracts and were working on these things. These things being UFOs. I almost said UAPs. UFOs. So, yeah, most people into UFO research have been talking about Pax River for a while, and now it's officially out and being proven as right. They think that UFOs are definitely being moved out of Pax River, either has just happened, they're already gone, or are going to be removed by the end of the month, which is this month, which is insane that there is a chance to see them or possibly see the trucks or the vehicles moving UFOs out of military bases in 2026. It's nuts. Whew. Hold on, let me take another drink. It's my voice is going to be gone by the end of this. So, should we move on? Yes. Let's move on to Edwards Air Force Base in California. It's known for testing advanced aircraft, and declassified documents show real flying saucers or, related to experimental U.S. technology. Some people say these are vehicles that look like flying saucers that are U.S. technology, experimental U.S. technology that only came out of Edwards Air Force Base. Some people say they could be reversed UFOs. Some people say they are definitely not extraterrestrial, but boy, do they look extraterrestrial from what you can find. There are a bunch of grain of salt theories and interviews and subjects about Edwards Air Force Base and how the government would take debris and backed over to Area 51. I'm gonna really jump around. At the crash site, investigators collected evidence and evaluated the remains of the aircraft for clues to the cause of the tragedy, then came to the task of cleaning the site and leaving no pieces of the highly classified aircraft for scavengers, the media, or others to find. They detonated controlled explosives to the hillside to free pieces of an aircraft that they had found that had crashed. They wanted no pieces left behind. They wanted to mislead anyone who might try to search the area for pieces. And that one of these pieces had been stored at Area 51 for 2 decades after it had broken up. So there are a lot of stuff that says Edwards Air Force Base was a stop in the Roswell material. Whether it went from Roswell to, I think, Texas to Wright-Patterson, but some people think it went from Roswell to Edwards Air Force Base for a long time, but it might have gone from Roswell to Wright-Patterson to Edwards to Area 51 once that became the official place for it. It's hard to say. It's really, like I said, this episode was really hard to pinpoint, and I don't want to go down too many broken threads, which I think I already have in this episode. And I apologize if you're already bored, but hey, you made it this far. We're almost done. We're getting to the end of it. There's a lot. There is talk about Edwards Air Force Base, according to a reporter and a photographer from Bakersfield, KERO-TV, which talked about vehicles or recovered stuff that were transported to a crash site by helicopter. They said that an Edwards Air Force spokesperson said the debris would be examined as precaution, but there was no immediate plans to return to any other sites to recover more because they had it all. I don't know, man. I don't know. I couldn't find KERO's TV's broadcast about recovered materials being sent to Edwards Air Force Base or newspaper articles that definitively showed recovered materials being sent to Edwards Air Force Base. I personally think that Edwards Air Force Base was more reverse engineered technology that we got from UFOs was done by like Lockheed and Skunk Works or whoever back in the day, and they were tested out of Edwards Air Force Base. And there was also a lot of spy planes that were done out of Edwards, and I think that muddied the water for UFOs around Edwards for a very long time. A lot of UFOs that reported that were seen around Edwards or over Edwards Air Force Base turned out to be now declassified spy planes and experimental military craft. So I think that's more Edwards. But let's do a couple of quick special mentions to some more, like the Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas. This was, again, in my opinion, and I think I'm right, the first destination for the debris from the 1947 Roswell crash before it was transferred to Wright-Patterson. Then there's the Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. It was connected to claims of UFO activity and missile malfunctions, and also the 1967 Malmstrom UFO incident, which if you don't know what it is, I did an episode about it. Go back and listen to it. If you can't find it, I'll do one in the future, but I know I did one. Then there's this from the January 8th, 1950 edition of the Atchison, Kansas Daily Globe, which was also reprinted in December 31st, 1949's Amarillo Globe, or maybe they reprinted each other, sorry, about an anonymous source account of Silas Newton Aztec crash saucer story. The government has collected several flying saucers and are analyzing them at a secret base in California. This base is not far from Los Angeles. What they're talking about here is most certainly Vandenberg Space Force, formerly Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is near Los Angeles, was opened up in 1941. It, again, has a ton of connections or history of UFO sightings, including a huge one in 2003. Contractors and personnel at Vandenberg and around Vandenberg saw, this is 2003, mind you, saw a 100-yard sided red square UFO come from the Pacific Ocean and hover over Vandenberg Air Force Base. Hundreds of people saw this in 2003. Just having a cell phone camera, but still, why isn't that a bigger story? Well, it kind of was, because it was talked about in the congressional hearings. Let's listen to that now.
Next question would actually be for Mr. Graves. Can you please explain to me in detail the event that occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base?
Certainly. In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean and hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains. There was a similar event within 24 hours later in the evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, there were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off. And this is information that was received through one of the witnesses that have approached me at Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Was this documented in any official form, whether it was a police blotter?
Yes, they had official documentation and records from the event that the witness held over the years.
And I'm not going to ask you to do it right now for time reasons, but you'd be able to sketch what was witnessed, correct? And have you seen that before on any other equipment and/or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field, and I have not seen anything personally that large.
There you go. It's insane. That was 2003. A 100-yard sighted red square UFO was seen for 45 seconds. Other notable incidents include a 1964 sighting of a saucer-shaped UFO, and more recently and finally for this episode, pardon me, finally for this episode, let's quickly talk about the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. Let's move over to that one. I'm making this the last one because we're already at 2 hours. 1953, Silas Newton had been attending early flying saucer conferences, but at the end of 53, he talked about this. In December 29th, 1953, Newton told me that there are 2 hangars at White Sands at which captured flying saucers are kept. About 15 or 16 saucers are now in government hands. Ordinarily, saucers float towards the Earth. Saucers contain a mechanism, so it comes gently to rest. The reason some saucers have crashed is that something goes wrong with this mechanism. Then in 1954, by the way, this mechanism that they're talking about, Bob Lazar then talked about. Then David Grush has talked about. And then they talk about it at the congressional hearings. So again, this was 1953. He's talking about stuff that people are still saying to this day, and more Freedom of Information Acts come out, are saying, yes, this is true. This is how their propulsion systems work. It's crazy. This was 1953. Then in 1954, the CSI Quarterly Bulletin, January 1954. They want to talk about like a summary of landed or crashed UFOs. They said there is no factual evidence to support any claims that a flying saucer has ever landed or set down on ground, even momentarily. After discussing it, it's so easily to understand how a tall tale recounted in a friendly circle can spread until it's accepted as authentic flying saucer lore. During the past 2 years, we had followed such a story of a captured flying saucer from Marchfield, where it's kept under a tarpaulin, progressively through 3 Southern California aircraft plants. This is one of them made of transparent metal, which cannot be machined with a diamond fly cutter. At last report, it has been loaded on a truck at Hughes Aircraft Company plant, was headed for some unknown destination. So even though they're saying in one breath, there is no authentic flying saucer, then they go on to talk about flying saucers that were seen at a variety 3 Southern California aircraft plants and then moved to an unknown destination. It's absolutely nuts. Then on October 9th, 1954, Desmond Leslie, who co-authored a book, Flying Saucers Have Landed, interviewed George Hunt Williamson. He investigated the story of a landed flying saucer held at California Air Force bases. An anonymous witness, an Air Forceman, told him the President Eisenhower had a look-see at the craft during his Palm Springs vacation. Kurt here. I've talked about this incident on a few episodes. It is all but 100% proven this happened. There are so many people that have come forward since 1954 to say this 100% happened. But this guy goes on to say, the rumored saucer at Muroc was actually there under guard in Hangar 27. Whew. With that, let's call that an end to this episode for now. There are plenty more rabbit holes. There are plenty more Air Force bases that have Freedom of Information Act or military personnel coming forward to say, yes, they 100% had recovered aliens, UFOs, wreckage, materials, all or some of what I'm just talking about. It seems like a lot of them. There's a lot more stories out there. So remember, don't focus on the negative or the negative will consume you. Let's focus on the positive. Let's manifest more of it. I'm sorry this episode took so long, but I'm trying my hardest to just focus on the positive and move past all the negative. Once again, I'm your host, Kurt Sandvik. This has been another edition of Paranormal Act. Thank you so much. I love you. Fuck ice.